And we are right back. Gene, it's great to have you. I know you'll introduce yourself, but tell us about Gene Ryan. I always like to know who's talking to us.
Sure. So I'm Jean Ryan. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Advisory at Daymon. I live in Stamford, Connecticut. My role at Daymon is essentially a team of really smart people focused on a bunch of different subjects and topics that are pertinent to private brand development, from brand strategy to category strategy to analytics, thought leadership, marketing, so on and so forth. So we work to help both retailers and suppliers evolve their programs, whether that be a better premium brand, or where to innovate, or what their consumers are looking for, or something further down in the execution space. So we partner with the rest of Daymon and all of those third parties to build kind of third programs, and it's really cool.
Yeah, Damon's been around a little while.
We've been around a little while, and I've been with Daymon for almost 11 years, which is hard to say out loud, but also pretty cool.
It's exciting. Well, I'm going to drop off the stage and let you do your thing.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm excited to chat with you today about what we're seeing in innovation for private brands at Daymon. Obviously, a really great topic. We're always excited to talk about this and keep pushing it forward with Chris and the rest of you who are always interested in this. So just really quickly, I'll start with who is Daymon, as Chris just alluded to. Our company, we really help customers drive their private brand businesses faster and more effectively, whether that be innovation, building a program from the ground up, and anything in between. So we are unique in the sense that we impact everything from strategy to execution. We have folks in the field day-to-day building these programs with decades of experience. We're not just talking about it, we're really helping retailers and suppliers to do it. We build these programs across channels and categories. So a lot of folks in the audience probably know us for our legacy history in food and beverage, which is absolutely still true, but fewer people realize the extent to which we work also in convenience, drug, mass, e-com, and all the categories they're in, from apparel to GM to pet, home decor, so on and so forth. So we're really focused on building private brands anywhere and everywhere, and that includes geography as well. We're a global company, presence internationally as well as in the US, where I'm based. And then finally, to complement that global presence, we really focus on that local connectivity and expertise, building relationships day in and day out with our partners to make sure that we are focusing on not just success today, but actually success tomorrow. If anyone out there is not familiar with Daymon, please reach out to me. Would love to talk with you further. I know a lot of you are, so I'll just leave it high level for now. And I'll get into innovation and what we're seeing. Always, most of you, I think, we like to start with who is the consumer, because when we're looking at innovation, we're innovating for somebody. We're not just innovating to innovate. Probably unsurprising to a lot of folks on this call, but I think the key things that we're seeing are really rooted in a couple of things. Primarily, we know that shoppers are looking for savings. A lot of this is driven by the lingering effects of inflation, for sure, even as that continues to stabilize versus where it was a couple of years ago. But what we're seeing is 55% of shoppers saying they're continuing to buy lower priced brands. 52% are saying we've switched to lower priced brands. So a lot of places where value is still a dominant part of the conversation. And we see them shopping multiple stores. In fact, I think returning almost to pre-pandemic levels of how that store variety gets split out. So they're really looking to make sure that they can meet their needs in the best way. We see about a quarter to a third going to the same store nearly every time, but 65% of them have a couple of preferred stores, depending on what they're looking for, what they're buying. So that really speaks to us, one of the key things around what innovation can do is making sure that you as a store are serving their needs so that they choose you, or that you're on their short list to be in one of those top one or two places. And finally, balancing out the value side of their needs. I think it's really important to point out that value in and of itself is not a need. They need to buy things that are convenient. They need to buy things, if you're a vegetarian, even if you're on a budget, you're still a vegetarian. What we're seeing, what we're really excited by, is this acceptance of and interest in private brands delivering on these other real needs that they are looking to solve for when they are purchasing products. 61% saying they want more convenient to use or consume private brand items. 37% say they want more sustainable private brand products and packaging. So they're looking to private brands to help them solve these issues and concerns that they have, definitely related to the search for value, but also above and beyond just price and value alone. And I think the key part of that is really understanding their trust and acceptance of private brands. Those of you who have read our private brand intelligence report from the end of last year, this slide probably looks familiar, but for those of you who haven't spent as much time with that report as me, I will just high level this really quickly. We fielded this report as part of that. We fielded this research as part of that report at the end of last year. And I think what's exciting here is really confirming the positive perceptions that we all think about when we think of private brands, but confirming that consumers have those positive perceptions as well. And that this is growing in key places where we would expect to see that. 92% of consumers trusting private brands as much as in more than national brands, rising 3 points versus a couple of years ago. I think we're challenging the legacy notion of private brands as lesser or generic when we look at things like not just value, but the complement of quality, and then validating the role that private brands can and are expected to play. Kind of what I was just saying on the previous slide. 94% of consumers view private brands as offering products that fit their lifestyles just as good as national brands, if not better. So again, that acceptance of an interest in private brands goes much beyond the dollar price point of the item. And that's really what we're excited about when we look at innovation and where the runway is to play. The other facet of the consumer from an innovation and a private brand standpoint that I think is really exciting is just this notion of who's buying private brands, who are these people that we are serving with these products. Really, it's everyone. And I think that what's critical there is not just seeing everyone as an amalgamation, an average consumer, but really getting into the specifics of your specific landscape, your specific market, your specific shopper base. When we look across the US market in particular, we saw more than 98% of shoppers buying private brands last year. That is practically everyone, whether they're buying it on purpose or buying it accidentally. You're overcoming that trial barrier and hopefully giving them a strong experience to then keep coming back, innovative products to try elsewhere. And I think, again, getting a little bit deeper into that, who is everyone, really we're seeing that share of sales grow across most channels. We're seeing it grow across all generations. We're seeing it grow across all income levels. So again, one single private brand product doesn't meet all of these needs, but I think it, coupled with the acceptance research that we're seeing, gives us permission to really put private brands anywhere, as long as the strategy and product development and quality pieces and all the factors and facets of that program line up to that need. On that note, we see 4 areas to look at for long-term sustainable growth, inclusive of, but also more critically supporting innovation. And really, it comes down to keeping a consumer at the center, like we were just saying in the prior couple of slides. So the 4 things that I'll just touch on really quickly are around innovating strategically, considering the role of tiers and categories, not just a private brand program holistically, providing full brand support, so we're not just launching and leaving these innovative items, and then maybe a little bit funny for an innovation conversation, but also this idea of not forgetting the basics we think is really critical, and I'll close on that. First, innovating strategically, why this topic matters. I'm probably preaching the choir for everyone who already logged into an innovation private brand webinar. But we really, want to make sure that innovation is a focused topic for the future term, so that we are balancing the needs of the short term. Everyone has fires to put on every day. But without a long-term focus on innovation, we risk becoming irrelevant. We risk ceding our share as a retailer, perhaps to other competitors, and balancing that quality and value component to really create reasons for consumer loyalty. So one of my favorite stats, even though it's also very scary, is this analysis that we've done that shows that up to 98% of product assortment is the same between competitive retailers. Now, that varies between the market, it varies between the channel. But what that says to us is if you're selling the same things as somebody across the street, you either need to innovate with a private brand program or compete on completely other dimensions to become the reason that shoppers choose you. One of those 1 or 2 stores that we saw on one of the first few slides that they're choosing for their list. And that's really the role that innovation plays for us. It's not just innovation to have innovative products, but it's actually innovation to become a store of choice, a brand of choice at shelf. And complementary here, we see that innovation is a topic that really all parts of that equation are interested in. Consumers are looking for innovation. I like the stat that 78% of consumers tell us they seek out new food and beverage flavors and trends. I'm one of those people for sure. But we're also seeing on the flip side, this is both a push and a pull. So manufacturers are hungry for innovation. They're looking for where to develop products, where they should be focusing their efforts. And retailers are also hungry to put that innovation on their shelves, up to 95% willing to accept new items outside the traditional reset cadence if it fits their innovation goals and strategies that they're looking to deliver on. So that is why we brought this topic so much. And thank you to Chris and the team for always prioritizing innovation. At Daymon, when we look at innovation, we talk about innovation pillars. So for those of you who are a little more familiar with our company, we put out every couple of years broad consumer-driven, broad global consumer trends that look across retail and large mega trend impacts that we think are going to be around for a long time. When we overlay those mega trends, that helps us give a lens to where we expect product development to follow those consumer needs that could come to life in a number of ways. And that's how we get these innovation pillars. Again, you can read our Frederick Brand Intelligence Report for more detail on these pillars or reach out to me to discuss further. It's on our website. But the three that we have focused on and that we really see a lot of opportunity as well as already some good solutions in the space are what we call purchasing with purpose, which is really around both plant forward solutions, the evolution of plant based, and not just for vegetarians and vegans of the world, but in packaging, in health based discussions, so on and so forth, as well as what we're calling Better for the World, which is that sustainability effort. We continue to hear that consumers are looking for this. We continue to get questions from retailers and suppliers on how to do it. We know it's been a conversation for a very long time, but we don't see that going away. The second pillar that we have identified is what we're calling fit for functionality. So this is around a multitude of elements that make a product more functional, whether that's peak performance, where we are looking at bringing together a multitude of ingredients or formats or things that deliver more, frankly, just out of product, or what we're calling the delivery systems, which is about all of the various definitions of convenience, simplicity, easier to access, quicker to use, so on and so forth. And then the final pillar is what we call unique and for me. And that's where we see innovation around the full experience of products themselves. So that can be dynamic kinds of flavor, of format, of texture. That can also be made for show, which is where we see the element of shareability and engagement come into play from a product. So not just buying the product, but how are you using it? How are you sharing it with friends? The role of social media and some of those more unique elements that, again, we don't see us going away. And we're seeing this a lot. These are just three examples of probably thousands that we could talk about if I had more than 30 minutes. But I think what's important here too is recognizing that these are not just niche pillars and topics. All of those are not relevant for every single retailer, but even retailers who are more mainstream or even in a discount space are pulling in these elements of innovation across their program, whether it's Sam's Club with their reimagined members mark brand guardrails that I think came out last year. They're really the shifting guardrail, the shifting goalposts of what defines sustainability now being factored into their entire brand, not just item by item. Things like that are why we really expect a lot of these trends to stay around and be more than just fads, especially when we look at the consumer. So again, not all of these are relevant for every single retailer, every single market. Really depends on your consumer, on your program, and on your total retail strategy. So the second topic to build on this idea of innovation is for us considering both tiers and categories and the way that can intersect with what we're trying to do with innovation. So one of the key things that we're seeing a lot and talking a lot about with our partners is the specific idea of the evolution of the mainstream tier. So formerly would have called this the NBE tier, right? The national brand equivalency, where the whole idea is you have the national brand product and you have your product and I'm 10% cheaper, specs match, you can trust it. Really important when private brands are looking to gauge or to garner trust, easy understanding from a shopper to know what they're picking up and putting in their cart. But really, as we move to this more of a mainstream tier discussion, we're still, in many cases, referencing national brands, but we're really pushing beyond them. And I think, again, the consumer is giving us permission to not just stuff against national brands, but actually develop our own unique solutions where our consumer is looking for something that we might have a unique insight on before or not waiting for the national brands to get there. And great examples of this across the board. Again, just to highlight a couple of these, but I think what Target did with their Hidden Gather brand, Chris, that you mentioned earlier, and passing as well, elevating the baseline of what they're considering their mainstream brand, right? With the elimination of things like artificial flavors, color sweeteners. Many national brands still have these in their products and their brands. In that way, this private brand is not just, matching it, but actually exceeding it. And because they're seeing that's what their consumers are looking for. And again, we're seeing this in across tiers, the mainstream tier and its evolution, but we're also seeing the evolution of what is a real premium product as the mainstream tier grows and shrinks, so on and so forth. So we can see this in a lot of places. And I think considering how the tiers play together is another thing that we're really interested in at Daymon, and working with our partners to figure out the right way to balance all of that innovation so it's not confusing at shelf or blurring the purpose of the tiers as you start to include these newer, more interesting products. Categories is the other part of this. I think there's absolutely a lot of still legacy categories in places where private brands have historically ceded ground or ceded leadership to national brands. And a lot of that, again, comes back to consumer trust. But I love this stat from Circana that up to 25% of sales at food retailers are actually non-food purchases. We want to make sure that as we're thinking about innovation, as we're thinking about kind of brand development, we're not just limited to those food and beverage categories. We're thinking differently. We're thinking about the role of innovation in these complementary spaces and or in these channels in particular, perhaps at the core of our program. Things like Target, Pete's and Barkley, pet brand. I love this example, and not just because I have two cats, but something as basic as cat scratchers, adding a lens of what would be in our uniquely for me pillar, thematically and seasonally creating purchase occasions with something as simple as offering these different seasons and different iterations, increases your purchase occasions, makes them more shareable, and takes what was otherwise just a boring product that you wouldn't think twice about. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Again, as long as we do it with the right brand strategy and consumer in mind, there's a lot of room to play here, and we're really excited for some of the non-food innovation that we're seeing too. So third, when we talk about focus areas for innovation, and Chris, you alluded to this as well, we want to make sure that we're talking about innovation, not just from product development, but actually the full support that brand or item is seeing across the ecosystem, especially when we look at where we expect to see the continued e-commerce growth coming from as consumers continue to even out a little bit from where we were during COVID for sure, but we don't see that becoming less important in their product journey or their shopping journey. So making sure that we're considering as retailers and suppliers the role that we play across that landscape is very critical. And we're seeing a lot of great development here as well. And again, beyond just waiting for the national brands to do things, I think is really important from an innovation standpoint too, whether that's social media presence, omnichannel education, or even getting into spaces that, again, historically a private brand focused commercial from a retailer during the 6 o'clock news hour, maybe 5 or 8 years ago, was way too expensive, not really on radar, would have been something that only maybe one or two companies were doing. And this is becoming more and more prevalent, which we love to see because that means that the private brands are getting support. And importantly, these points of marketing and education are not just around price. They are evolved beyond or into the rest of the value equation that we talked about earlier, where there are very brand specific and retailer specific reasons to look forward to try all of these brands. And that's what the marketing efforts are really focused on, again, further than just a coupon or a price-based reason to believe. And then lastly, and again, I said this a little bit earlier, but when we talk about innovation, it might be counterintuitive, but we are really talking about this a lot with our partners, that innovation has to happen on a strong base. Just focusing on innovation alone, it can be exciting, it can be really fun, but innovation needs to be driving growth and clarity, not confusion. And that means that we need to make sure these baseline expectations that our shoppers are experiencing when they purchase our private brands, whether it's a core product that we've had for years or a brand new one, they have a consistent experience that helps further their understanding of the brand and the retailer in totality. These 8 pieces that I've got on the slide, or there could be dozens here, but making sure that pricing strategies are still clear across the core and innovation items, making sure we're maximizing our omnichannel presence, that our packaging design is ownable and clear across the brands and items. Through demo and promotions to our trial, all of these things are really critical and help make sure that our shoppers have consistent experiences and repeat their purchases with us based on that positive experience. I'll just close on this one example of that. And for those of you who joined us in December, this should seem familiar, but it continues to be a really important topic for us as we talk about innovation in particular. One of the great things about private brands is they're spread across the store, right? So many of them are these mega brands with thousands of items, and even the category specific ones, often they span a wider scope than a lot of the national brands are, which gives them a unique play to drive trial across multiple categories based on that one really good experience. And we saw earlier that 85% of consumers view the quality as equal to or better than national brands, which helps this be a positive. But the interesting thing is that can also be a risk. If your shopper tries this cool new product that you've developed and it's not living up to their expectations, you also risk the negative perception that can run then on the rest of your brand. So it's really important to make sure that all of those baseline elements are still well defined, executed, and true on an ongoing basis, not just at launch. We've done some quality assurance research and across a number of national retailers, and we've seen as many as 1 in 4 private brand items testing at a less than satisfactory rating, which is a higher percentage than what we see when we test national brands in the same space. Again, really just speaks to the importance of matching up what consumers expect as far as their quality with what they're actually experiencing to ensure that experience is positive and drives that continuous trial versus just that one time taste test or opportunity that we're getting. We want to turn that into multiple purchases and loyalty. Again, this is just one example. Would love to chat with anybody afterwards if they want more information on this or any of the other baseline pieces. But we really see that as critical for the innovation conversation, even though it's maybe more of the boring baseline side of it versus the cool product development element that I think a lot of us go to immediately. So we think all of these 3 takeaways are really critical for the year as we continue to drive innovation. Unsurprisingly, continuing to focus on consumers at the center of private brands so that we're delivering on the traffic they're putting in us. Having a strong innovation pipeline, but then also balancing that with the strong foundation of the program as well. So we're really excited for the future of private brand innovation. I think a lot of these narratives are ones that we've been seeing and talking about for a long time, but how they continue to develop and evolve as the consumer continues to develop and evolve. That's why we're really, really excited to see what comes next. That's all that I have for you today.
Thanks, Jean. So we have a few minutes, so if you don't mind, let's chat. And if anybody has any questions, if they want to throw questions into the comments there, we'll see if we can grill Jean. Politely, of course. So I love the transition from NB to mainstream. That's the difference between just saying we're a copy of something and mainstream is huge. As we've both said, innovation comes in many flavors, right? As I look at what you called it for the mainstream thing, so the Good and Gathers, Members Mark reinventing themselves, even Wakefern's newest brands, Bowl and Basket, they've all moved mainstream up a step. So versus having a small collection of better for you products with all the nasty's gone out of them, they've said this is our brand. What is the future? Does the mainstream tier move up completely, do you think? Is that where we're going?
I think that as consumers continue to get further education about what's in their food, what's in their products, how a product was made, we're only going to continue to see them expect better, frankly, out of their products. And that might not be a health and wellness based ingredient discussion. It might be fair labor practices. It might be stronger origin education stories and things like that. So I think that trend of better is just going to continue. The access to information today is continues to grow over time. So I don't think that's going to go away. I think for us right now, what we're expecting to see is more of an expansion of what can be mainstream and what's considered mainstream. So there's a lot of space to play there. And even the brands that are elevating the pushing kind of against that upper limit of mainstream, many of those brands still retain a national brand equivalency component of that brand strategy because it's not absent the value equation, right? What I think it does is it pushes up or out. But there's still a role for lifestyle tier in most portfolio programs as long as your tier strategy is clear. There's likely still a role for premium products or a premium brand and a premium tier up here. It just means we have to make sure that we're looking at what each tier is doing and what each brand is doing and developing a thorough strategy for each one that includes what's the role of innovation, what are our pricing components, so that all of those brands are still clear to consumers who aren't seeing our behind the scenes strategy documents every day. So we don't see mainstream as, blowing up and becoming the only tier in a lot of these stores. But I think it just drives the discussion of what is your actual brand strategy and how does that connect to execution. The importance of that is just going to be more and more important because it can't just be a more expensive product than for a higher tier. The claims, the value proposition have to be really strong and really connected.
Well, and to me, I didn't get it as blowing up everywhere, but more, and most retailers, private brands, 20 to 30% in the US, right? Somewhere goes up and down, depending on which number you look at. If we made the mainstream tier better, we have the potential to actually move the food industry in general,
Yeah.
right? To get some of the bad chemicals out,
Yeah.
to really talk about ultra processed foods, to do other things that would still be great everyday products,
Right.
but they're not the same old crap.
Right.
Innovation in a leadership kind of way, honestly.
Yeah.
As you look across, because I know obviously Daymon has a footprint globally, is there anything you see out there globally that you think we should be thinking about in the US? And I'm just making questions up. So
This is not a new answer, but I think
Mhm.
the sustainability conversation is one that I think a lot of us in the US need to make sure that our partners are prepared for. You can look across to other countries and see where, at minimum, regulation is forcing the issue, if not the consumer interest itself. And I think we should expect to see that coming over time. And if we wait until we have to do something, it's going to be too late. So the retailers and the brands and the manufacturers who are already working on thinking about things like emission strategies and plastic replacement and all of those things, it can seem very future focused. And obviously there's money, time, R&D that's required for that. A lot, it's easier said than done, but it's not going to not come. So I think that
Yeah.
conversation is one where, again, we look and we can see so many other retailers and brands really innovating beyond what we're required to do here in the US. So I think keeping that on radar is important.
And honestly, that's the exact conversation we're having at our sustainability event. It's
You did not pay me to say that.
no, I did not, but we're on the same page, obviously, because the sustainability event, if you've never been and we get pushback and people are like, we don't do anything sustainable and we don't, we're not leaders. That event is a conversation
Yeah.
with the industry about how do we move forward and what is the legislation and how is product and packaging and how are we telling the story. And honestly, nobody's very good at it. And we're all trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
So if you want help figuring it out, that's why you come to the event because
Yeah.
it's a conversation more than any of the events we do. October in Phoenix, please buy a ticket. We do have a question for you from Bruno Solby. I believe he's in Europe somewhere, Bruno. Can Gene share Damon's perspective on managing both elements, the equivalency with better value and a premium pushing the envelope strategy? Do retailers have different brands for the tiers? I suspect Bruno actually knows the answer to this question, but we'll let you answer it, Gene.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I would say it's not a one size fits all answer. It also depends on how you are defining premium, which is probably the word that I most often say I need a different word for as often as possible. In some brands, we're seeing the push for innovation into things that might be considered better or premium done within the mainstream brand. And I think Walmart is actually a surprising answer. I had them as a couple of examples on one of the slides where we were looking at mainstream tier innovation. Things that a few years ago would have been considered premium, like a better packaging format or a cooled in flavor, a few years ago would have wound up in your premium tier. We're seeing that ice cream flavors is a really great example. The quality is not better, but the flavor is different and cool and even shareable or trendy. That's still winding up in many brands in their mainstream tier without a price premium. So it's a different definition of value and premium than maybe what it was before. But we're absolutely still seeing a strong role for the premium tier or premium brands versus the mainstream tier. And it really just comes down to how those brands are defining what their strategy is and what their reason to be essentially is. It's no longer enough to just have something that's premium because it's expensive. So I think it's really important to make sure that all of your brands, regardless of quality tier, have that element of what does innovation mean for this brand, so that pushing the envelope, so to speak, in one language of the question, is not just something that happens only in one part of your program. There's likely even a role for innovation in the value tier. It's just very limited and going to be very different than what a premium tier might say is worth developing. And it just is a balance of time, effort, consumer interest, and your overall business strategy.
And North American retailers have a tendency to have a bit more complicated portfolios that have lifestyle brands, and they may
Mhm.
not have their name in the packaging. The Europeans would call them fancy brands, right?
Mhm.
So it's just market, it's who you are, it's who you want to
Yeah.
be, it's who your customer is, all those things. Because if I go to London and walk through Marks and Spencer, it's pretty much all Marks and Spencer with a few sub brands, right? Let's see here. Bruno says, thanks.
Yeah.
We'll show Bruno's comment. Thanks for the question. Gene, I know you're available out there if anybody would
I am.
like to reach out to you. This video obviously will be available to watch, and we'll make sure to send out for everybody. So thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate the conversation and the great insights.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.